I wanted to talk about Copium Incorporated
Yes.
for the last segment, so we're working together on this.
Yes.
So this is something we spoke about yesterday. So this was a lady who was a Democrat in response.
Jennifer Pro-Reality Rubin, which is not how she's known by everyone else.
Or this tweet makes it perfectly clear. So this was in response to the Democrats getting absolutely chewed out at the impeachment hearings, shown to just be liars, like you were faking evidence. So then they lost the vote, and her response was, House managers utterly vindicated. They got every vote possible.
I mean, I guess that's true.
Utter cope. So we wanted to go on to the next article.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the way that the Democrats have been approaching American politics, really. And I like, as an outsider, I find it really gross watching the Democrats. Every time they take a loss, they're like, right, okay, democracy has failed, flip the table. We need to change the system so this won't happen again. It's like, it's not wrong when you lose an election or when you lose a motion in a court or in the Senate or anything like that. That's not wrong. That's not saying the system is wrong. That's saying that there are enough people who don't agree with you that you can't get your way.
And again, this isn't accusations that malpractice has taken place.
No.
It's just the practice ran, and we didn't like the
the
outcome.
procedure went as the procedure was intended to go, and you didn't get the result you wanted because there are people who were not persuaded by your arguments. So instead of reassessing yourselves and changing your arguments and thinking, okay, what did we do wrong? Why is this happening? They're like, right, okay, we need to jury rig the system. We need to gerrymander the system in order that we can win.
No, they're not even asking to gerrymander it. They're
Well,
asking to destroy the whole thing.
Yes. But like it's an embarrassment. It's really, really embarrassing because what they're saying is, look, actually we have no persuasive power to what we're saying, and we can't change your mind because what we're asking for is insane in most cases and deeply anti-American in other cases, and so what we need is a kind of dictatorship that you're not involved in, and that would be better for us. But we'll get to the dictatorship that they're proposing in a minute. This is just an article from 2019 from CNN about how the Democrats want to overhaul everything, and they're not wrong. I mean, like this is the way they frame it. A big list of systemic changes that some Democratic presidential candidates are pushing is getting longer and longer. Such foundational changes to the U.S. system of government are a step further than Democrats' massive, ambitious proposals, blah, blah, blah. So they've got like these general social proposals that aren't a radical restructuring of the United States, such as ambitious proposals to improve social safety nets, remaking the health service, testing job guarantees, doing nest eggs to American children, responding to the threat of climate change. So, okay, fine. But then you get like the concrete proposals, right? It's like expand the Supreme Court, remake the voting system, add a new state. In fact, add 2 new states, lower the voting age. And it's like, what are you doing? So what you're trying to do is, again, sort of gerrymander the way that the process works in order to, like, by legal mechanism, annex to yourselves a whole slew of new votes, right? To get new electors, to get new senators, to get whatever it is, new population when it comes to immigration or when it comes to lowering the voting age. It's never going, right, okay, this is the demos of the United States. We've defined it. It has been defined by our founding fathers. And so to them, we need to pitch our wonderful ideas. It's always right. We need to get children voting so we can persuade the children to vote for us. We need to get immigrants in and voting so they can vote for us. We need to, add new states in areas that we already control to increase the number of senators that these areas send and things like this. It's like, that's what I would call cheating. Right? This is what I would otherwise call cheating. The game is set. The board is set. We're not changing the rules. Now we play the game, right?
Well, if they had run on a campaign, change people's minds on the issue of children should be able to vote and then got in, fair enough. But, I mean, do you remember any of Joe Biden's policies? Was
No.
children voting the thing people were voting for there?
I mean, he probably did have lowering the age of voting on his manifesto.
But that's the thing.
Actually.
Was it in anyone's mind?
No,
they were thinking Orange Man bad.
Of course. It was. None of the things that they've been doing have been like, what they were campaigning on, really. But this again, from US News, like, it really does seem that the Democrats actually kind of hate American democracy. And it's like, the Democrats just look at democracy and go, well, democracy's failed. And this is presumably the impetus behind the Time article revealing that they've fortified the election results. Because otherwise democracy might have failed again and not elected a Democrat. But yeah, this was during the Democrat primaries. And one of the things that they were clinging to here was Bernie Sanders having like 3 big wins in the initial caucuses. And one activist, a 38-year-old adult educator, said she'd like to see the United States remade into a nation with stronger social safety nets, as well as more funding for schools and healthcare. I want fundamental change. I would settle for restoration. I'll take what I can get at this point. It's like, okay, so just desperate for change. This is the continual message. And so October 2020. This, I think, is a hilarious title for any article. The most democratic thing Joe Biden could do is pack the courts. Why not? Why not? Of course it is. That is, I believe that when they say democratic, what they mean that with a capital D, like the
most Democrat thing he can do.
Yeah, exactly. The most Democrat thing he can do is change the system in order to make sure that he can get his way. That's it. This apparently isn't radical. Even Abraham Lincoln did it. Well, if you're going back that far, I mean,
it's Civil War territory.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, Lincoln did it in 1863 as a means of denying the pro-slavery movement a foothold in the highest court. It's like, okay, but that's not exactly a fair comparison. I mean, for a start, Lincoln was a Republican, and you want to do it to the Republicans as Democrats, presumably for the purpose of increasing your sort of Democrat fiefdoms and your plantations of welfare dependence. So, I mean, you're kind of culturally appropriating the Republicans' concern for civil rights here, Democrats, as usual. But anyway, so it doesn't really matter what their argument is. Their argument is a bad argument because it is. And then we get to abolishing the Electoral College. Well,
there's no democratic will for it.
No.
You remember during the campaign, Joe Biden himself was asked about this, and he just says, "I don't believe that the people deserve to know my position."
Which means yes. This means yes, I will do this. If you're not going to say no, then that's a yes, because this is the thing. So with the number of Supreme Court justices, it's set by statute, not by the Constitution, according to the dean of the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. There is nothing to keep Congress and the president from increasing the size of the court. So this is clearly like an oversight that the founding fathers had not considered or something like that. And so, I guess that is the case. And so obviously they're like, oh, well, Trump's packed the Supreme Court with far right people. It's like, no, he hasn't. Everyone wishes that he was, because then none of this would have happened. You would have got nowhere. And maybe the election results would have been challenged in the court had he actually packed them with far-right Trump loyalists. But he didn't do that. And the Supreme Court stood back and said, we're not taking any part in this.
They literally recused themselves and refused to hear the case.
Literally. And that wouldn't happen if it was like hard right people, Trump supporters that were in there. They'd be like, okay, partisan advancement, If
it was hard right, they'd probably shut it down and get Joe Biden in. My opinion.
Well, yeah. But anyway, so you get places like the Brookings Institute, which are left-wing think tanks that produce policy ideas like this. It's time to abolish the Electoral College. And I love the framing of this, right? Because it's hard to frame that in a way that isn't just, well, we've got loads of immigrants in Democrat-run cities now, and so now's the time for us to get direct democracy, because then we get everything we want and you get nothing that you want, right? He says, for years, when I taught campaigns and elections at Brown University, I defended the Electoral College as an important part of American democracy. I said the founders created the institution to make sure that the large states did not dominate the small ones in presidential elections, and that power between Congress and state legislators was balanced, and there would be checks and balances in the constitutional system. Well, I mean, I'm persuaded. That sounds like a great argument for an electoral college. If you're going to be a federation of states, and some states could, I don't know, arbitrarily open their border to Mexico and bring in millions and millions and millions of immigrants who they then want to give voting rights, that could indeed swing the way that presidential elections work in the United States. And like some small state like Georgia or something that's miles away from all of this is just like, what are you talking about? My electoral college, my electoral college vote's worth nothing now because California's got like 50,000 of them because they let in 100 million billion immigrants, and it's like, well,
billions and billions.
Yeah,
Sorry, just Trump's voice in my head.
Yeah, but like that's not fair. And it's the same thing with Germany and the European Union just being like, right, we're going to arbitrarily open our borders to all of these refugees, millions of refugees. By the way, Latvia, you need to take some refugees. It's like, what? Who agreed to this?
I didn't consent to this.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't consent to this. Is exactly the point, right? And so that's a really great argument for an electoral college style system in a federal organization. If you're going to have that, if you're going to have this kind of autonomy, you need these kind of overarching protections for other people because these decisions matter. But I like this. In recent years, though, I've changed my view. Right, okay, so you became a doctrinaire leftist, right? I've changed my view and concluded that it is time to get rid of the Electoral College. Several developments have led me to alter my opinion on this institution. Income inequality, Democrat problem, right? Problem for Democrats in Democrat areas. They've brought in their serf class into San Francisco, into Los Angeles, and the Hollywood moguls and the Silicon Valley moguls. There's
don't They're not right-wingers.
They're not right-wingers, but there is massive wealth inequality between the billionaires and their serf class. That's true, right? Again, not something that happens in like rural flyover America, where the boss of a business might be earning 100 grand and then his employees are earning 50 grand, right? It's like, it's not the same sort of comparison at all. And so, like, the problems the Democrats have created have become the first reason that he wants to get rid of it and punish the Republicans, right? Okay. The next one is geographic disparities. Yeah, okay, so the coastal elites have let in millions of serfs, and yeah, I guess that's a geographic disparity, sure. But again, not the Republicans' fault. Why should they be punished for this? And how discrepancies between the popular vote and electoral college are likely to become more commonplace given these economic and geographic inequalities. It's like, right, so A, the popular vote means nothing, so shut up about it. That's not an issue. I mean, is that even in the Constitution? I doubt it is. Like, I doubt it's part of anything. I think it's something they've just coined in, like, retrospect. But even then, so what? So what if that's the case? Maybe you shouldn't have let in millions of immigrants into your Democrat-run states to create massive inequality. But no, the things that we have done are now reason to punish the Republicans. I can't stand it, man. But and then he obviously goes on to explain that in the essay. But it's like, no, these are not justified, in my opinion. You can't say, look, we've created a load of problems, so we're going to mess things up for you. But and when you look at the statistics as well, it's very obvious that this is a partisan case. So this is the Hill who'd done a Hill-Harris-X poll of 1,000 registered voters, and 44% of respondents said they want to get rid of it, while 37% said they want to keep it, and the rest said they don't know. 19% said they don't know. So there's the combined will is not really in favour of getting rid of it if unsure means don't change anything, which I think is a reasonable interpretation of what an unsure person would probably want to do in any given situation. Should we change something? I don't know.
Nah.
Doesn't mean change it, does it?
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
I feel like they've dropped themselves out of there. They're not taking a decision.
Sure, it could be. But
Anyway. But you can see how this sort of goes, like his argument there, where it's the idea is...
So it turned out that 60% of Democrat voters did want to get rid of it, whereas when with Republicans, 25% wanted to get rid of it. So you can see this massive partisan divide when it comes to left and right. And obviously the Democrats are looking at this as a political strategy. They think we'll gain more power, we'll have the presidency more often, we'll have more influence in government if we get rid of the Electoral College, and therefore it's clearly just a partisan move to do it. And there are lots of left-wing. If you go back 10 years, it was the left-wingers going, oh, we need to keep the Electoral College. You go to slate.com in 2012, and they've got a very sterling defense of the Electoral College, because obviously they look like they needed it for Obama and things like this. But now it's Republicans, oh, we need to get rid of it. It's so transparent.
Well, it's not that. It's that there's large increase in immigration, and all that immigration is going to certain places.
But it's only when they know it benefits them. If they thought it was going to hurt them, they would get rid of it.
That's sort of politics. You know, you kind of expect that the underdog's going to be complaining about the system. But but these guys did it to themselves. You know, they're the ones importing massive amounts of people, and then they changed their opinion on it. So it's not just that they're not in power this time round. It's that, no, we've changed the structure. Yeah, and now we want to destroy the structure that was there. It's
just that they so obviously do not adhere to principle, right? And in principle, I think the Electoral College is a good idea for a federal system. And so that I think is uncontroversial if you approach it from like John Rawls's sort of veil of ignorance position, where it's like, look, going into the system, you don't know where you're going to land. So would you rather a system that operated fairly for whichever side? It will restrict the power and influence of the great in order to protect the power and influence of the small. And you think of it, okay, well, if I was, I don't know where I'm going to land here. So if the country happens to go full Republican overnight for some reason, then whatever Democrat strongholds are left, they're going to be like, yeah, we'd love the Electoral College, please. And so if that were the case, they'd be like, okay, well, we want to keep the Electoral College. So in principle, that is a good thing for whoever is on the weaker side of things, right? And again, it's to maintain a kind of central sort of balance of democratic politics to make sure that the system stays together and it's not just one group stamping down on the other group. And so in principle, it's definitely a good idea. But when they're like, oh, well, it advantages us now to get rid of the Electoral College, let's get rid of it, then you can tell they're not applying by principle. They're just playing politics. And it's really gross. I can't stand it.
No, I think you're right. But this is the weird thing about his argument, which is that essentially they look at it through a prism of direct democracy is the good end goal that they want to get to. It's just why? Like, why do you want that?
Don't know.
Like, I don't think there's any real good arguments for direct democracy being the way that all of your government should work. I mean, it's just absurd.
I mean, it depends if we want a demagogue to persuade us to invade Sicily or not.
Well, if I wanted to appeal to a leftist for a second, I'd probably just point to like segregation and be like, well, if the majority of the population decided they want to engage in this, shouldn't you think there should be some, mechanisms to try and help the minority here? Guess not.
Well, the thing about direct democracy as well, like, I can only think of one really major example of it, and that's Athens. And that ended in tears. So, because it turns out that people are really susceptible to charismatic speakers getting them to do crazy things.
So there should be some kind of moderating force.
It makes sense, yeah.
And talking of moderating forces, so I think the next one here is meant to be the argument that they now want to get rid of the Senate. So,
well, that was where this was all going. It's like, okay, so if there's, they're like, okay, so the electoral college is a problem, the Supreme Court's a problem because we didn't win everything that we wanted, and now it's like, right, the Senate's the problem. Get rid of the Senate. And it's like, oh, Ave Caesar. We're getting rid of the Senate now, are we? Because this is one of the things that Julius Caesar did, right? He, after conquering Gaul, he wanted to pack the Senate with hundreds of Gallic senators, and the Romans were like, why? It's like, well, because you're not going to give me everything I want, and these people are going to give me everything I want. This is exactly the same principle in play.
He did just win a civil war, so he kind of could do what he wants.
No, this was before the Civil War.
Was it not? I thought it was after.
No, this is one of the reasons that caused the Civil War. Because people are like, what the hell are you doing? We're not having hundreds of conquered people coming into the Senate and acting as if they're the equivalent of Romans, right? And understandably so. But the point is, you do this when you want to end democracy. This is an argument for the ending of the Republic. Getting rid of the Senate leaves like just the sort of executive branch, really, and the judicial branch that they will have packed out with. It can mean that if there's no limit to the amount of Supreme Court justices it could have, why not have 20? Why not have 50? 5,000 Democrat Supreme Court justices and like 3 Republican ones or 6 Republican ones. What stops them? Nothing. But anyway, sorry. They want to abolish democracy. What were they saying?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go over it too much, especially we don't have time now. But he was basically saying that you could get a minority of the population and still have a 50% of the Senate. So, like, the Republicans have X amount of senators, 50 or whatever.
Yep.
But if you add up all the population of their states, it's not enough to be 50% of the population. It's just like, dude, who cares? Like, this, no one wants direct democracy. Like, if you want to make an essay for that, write that.
Have direct democracy in California if you want.
Try it out. That's what the states are for,
Yeah, that's exactly
Try all these experiments. And, wow, sure, California's going great right now. But the last thing I wanted to mention was...
No. We'll point to New York as a state of... the state that's being brilliantly governed by the Democrats.
So the last thing I wanted to mention here was the will to do a 9/11 style commission.
What about Portland? In fact, Portland's going pretty great, isn't it? Sorry,
they want to do a commission on the insurrection, so they want to investigate what happened there. And the framing sounds pretty weird. And this was reported ages ago, where Hillary Clinton's podcast, because she has one now, she had Pelosi on, and Pelosi said in the podcast, with you, Mr. President, all roads lead to Putin. And it's just like, they still haven't got over this. It's cringe.
That's such cringe, because nobody in their right mind thinks that Putin controls Trump.
Yeah. Like, both of them are still of the opinion that the 2016 election was orchestrated by Putin. And they even say in there that they're wondering whether the people storming the building were orchestrated by Putin as well.
Just get over it, you bloody monomaniacal idiot.
But she's actually gone ahead and got this agreed by both sides. So the next link here is her announcing that she's going to do that. So this is a commission into what went on. But I'm actually in favor of this after reading the details, because of course the framing of this is they want to be like, well, we lost the impeachment, so we'll do a commission, and then we'll just in the commission blame everything on Trump. And I know that that's what they're going to try and do.
Of course it is.
We have a quote from Senator Chris Coons saying that they will lay bare the record of just how responsible and how abjectly violating of his constitutional oath Mr. President Trump was. So it's like, okay, that's your narrative coming to this.
Yeah.
But they also mention that one of the things I want to go into is, well, how did this actually happen?
Because Washington D.C. is controlled by Democrats, isn't it?
Well, not that, the police. Like the police standing outside of the courts.
Yeah, but the people in charge of the police, they're not going to be like hardcore Republicans, are they?
Well, I don't know the details because the Capitol might have its own department or something like this.
Yeah, sure.
But either way, like this was, a planned thing. You knew what he was saying. Yeah. You would have had precautions. And we've seen the videos now.
Yep.
Like anyone can go on Twitter of the cops standing by, getting shouted at for not intervening.
Yep.
Some of them opening up gates. Yep. And it's pretty revealing. It's like, okay, this doesn't seem like
one of the ones where they've literally opened the door and you can see the protesters politely filing into the building. It's like, Why is that happening?
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
I would like to know. I mean, would you like to know at home? So they mention here, so Nancy Pelosi saying, now, as always, security is the order of the day. The security of our country, the security of our capital, which is the temple of our democracy, and security of our members. Which, okay, like, I don't like Nancy Pelosi. I don't like the way she's coming at this. But I would like to know what happened with the security on that day. Why was it so bad? Yeah. And why do we have so many videos of the police seemingly Facilitating would be the right word.
That's a very, very good question.
And the last thing I just want to show is a Trump parade, because while this is all going on, what's Trump been up to? This is him after getting acquitted, driving through, just crowds of people turning up to celebrate him, and it's like, where's Joe Biden's crowds?
Yeah, the loser of the 2020 election, unlike the most popular president in the world, in fact, in history, who is now in his occupied armed fortress of a capital that has walls, barbed wire, and 7,000 National Guard.
He's got the National Guard to parade for him. Doesn't need supporters.
I love this. This is so great.
I love it.
But this is the thing, right? You can see that people genuinely really like Trump. They genuinely like him. No one genuinely likes Biden.